Everybody is salivating over this Saturday's card in Brooklyn, featuring 3 154-pound title fights. The Fight Journal will be in the house. This card is being called the best card of the year by quite a few people. Maybe it will be, maybe not. I tend to look at it as 3 experienced guys taking on 3 guys whose resumes don't come close to theirs. LARA, Jermall Charlo, and TROUT represent the veterans on this card. HURD, LUBIN, and Gausha represent the others. For the record, Slick Justin Hurd, Swift Jared Hurd's brother, is on the card, on the undercard. Tony Harrison, who lost to Jared earlier this year, is also on the card. And a couple of young guys nobody is talking about now, but I want you to remember the Fight Journal mentioned them to you today. One guy I actually interviewed last year. If you know them, great. If you don't know them, you'll know them in a couple of years, because they'll be in the same spot that LUBIN and Gausha, as well as Hurd, are right now. One guy is named Richardson Hitchens, who was an Olympian. He's a Brooklyn guy, but he fought for Haiti in the Olympics. He's only 2-0. Keep an eye on Richardson Hitchens. Good fighter. The other guy is one of my favorites. His name is Dylan, the Real Dyl Price. I'll put a video at the bottom. Did a little interview with him in North Carolina when he made his pro debut. He's a super flyweight, and maybe a few years from now there'll be another one of those super fly cards, and he'll be one of the featured boxers. So I'll leave a video of when I interviewed him below. Keep an eye on Dylan, the Real Dyl Price, and that's the Real DYL, the Real Dyl, because his name is Dylan, DYLAN. So the Real Dyl Price, DYL, the Real Dyl. Okay, so let's get to the big 3 fights. All right, let's start with the headliner. LARA, 24 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws, 14 knockouts, will be defending his IBO and WBA World Junior Middleweight or Super Welterweight titles against Gausha, 20 wins, 0 losses, 9 knockouts. Everybody you ask about this fight either picks LARA before you can even finish the question, or they say they'd rather talk about the other 2 fights. For LARA, who is an overwhelming favorite, he needs to be active in this fight. The danger for him is he doesn't throw a lot of punches, and sooner or later, Father Time will have him in with the wrong opponent. Is that opponent Gausha? LARA has long arms, and he lands well to the body from distance and then moves. What I like to see LARA do in this fight is to put more body work in. Another thing that Gausha allows people to do, and even though he's okay with it, he shouldn't do it. He does a lot of fighting while backpedaling. It's funny. It's not like what LARA did versus Canelo or what Canelo did against Golovkin. That, in a lot of instances, would be considered running. But it's more like what Pernell Whitaker did when he fought Chavez. And he's good with it, but it's not what he should do in this fight. The fight Gausha should use is to come forward with his hands up. If you watch the two fights LARA had with Vanes Martirosyan, Vanes kind of neutralized LARA's movement by cutting the ring off. But then he also took a step back each time LARA tried to land, and then he kind of got right back in front of him and stayed on the front foot. I don't know if Gausha watched those fights or not, but that's what he should do. It was kind of like the Winky Wright thing. Winky Wright never took 3 or 4 hops backwards and then kind of reset and then came forward. He always stayed in range so that he could kind of use upper body movement and make you miss, but still be in enough range to land his punch, which is the sweet science. Hit and not get hit, and then hit again. I think Gausha needs to do like Vanes did and keep his left foot on the outside of LARA's right foot. Cut him off and move him to your right, and keep that jab pumping as either a hard stick or as a deterrent coming in. Throw your combinations as LARA backs up, because he will back up. You can outwork LARA, and you can win or steal rounds that are usually close if you're consistent with these tools that I just mentioned. In big fights, Erislandy LARA always seems to do just enough to argue that he could have won, but not enough to clearly win. If Gausha knows his history, he'll follow the Martirosyan blueprint. LARA and Martirosyan also fought a second time. The first fight was a technical draw. It was a clash of heads, and it was scored a draw. Technical draw. I thought Vanes beat LARA in that first fight. Nobody likes to talk about that. I don't even know if half the world watched the first fight, because everyone's talking about how good LARA is, how he wins by big margins, and then they bring up the Canelo fight. Nobody talks about the Martirosyan fights. The second fight, LARA won a unanimous decision, even though many people thought Vanes Martirosyan won that fight also. Everybody I've spoken to, or at least listened to, thinks LARA stops this kid or wins big, like 120 to 108. A shutout. If it goes the distance, I can see Gausha able to steal a few rounds, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe even 5 if he's on his game. Most people, when they say it's going to be an early knockout or a blowout by LARA, they base their knockout prediction on seeing Gausha when he was on TV. He got dropped hard by Luis Hernandez. Most say that it didn't look good, but if you went on and watched the fight, I thought Gausha finished pretty strong in that fight, no matter how you scored it. The shot that Hernandez dropped Gausha with, it looked like he just grazed him, but Gausha went down hard, and it was kind of like a looping right on Gausha's ear as he was caught leaning to his right. It's a bad defensive move. So it was a moment, and it was a moment. Gausha, he got up, shook it off, and I mean, he finished strong. So nobody talks about how strong he finished in that fight. But I didn't look at that fight too much. The fight to be concerned with, and granted, it was only Gausha's 4th professional fight, is the William Waters fight. Check out Terrell Gausha's fight with William Waters. And Gausha got caught with a looping right hand by a journeyman, and he went down hard. He did. Later in the round, Waters caught Gausha again. Another big right hand, and he buzzed him. So the kid's punch tolerance might not be there when you hit him on or near the temple, and that was concerning. But once again, it was his 4th professional fight. Saw Andre Ward get dropped big time against Darnell Boone so earlier in his career. So and this other cat. So the point I'm trying to make is we won't know until we know, right? So if the punch tolerance is the thing, if that's the case, and we get the LARA who looks to kind of find an opening to land that big shot that he can land accurately by timing Gausha and kind of figuring out his defensive patterns, then yes, I can see Erislandy Lara stopping him. However, if Gausha employs the plan that I suggested, he's going to go rounds. And I think he'll be competitive. The reason I think Gausha can bank some rounds is because he seems to be the type of guy who fights up or down to competition. Well, on Saturday night he needs to fight up, and he can do so. But I think he'll fall short. He'll drop a competitive but clear decision. I'm going to go with Erislandy Lara by 8-4, 8 rounds to 4, or maybe a late stoppage. Gausha is going to test him a bit. Gausha is going to get his respect. If Lara's on the money, he'll win. But Gausha will win his share of rounds. If Lara's on the money and he really turns up the heat, I think he'll drop Gausha and maybe get a late stoppage. Next up is pretty intriguing IBF World Super Welterweight or Junior Middleweight title matchup between Swift, Jarrett Hurd, 20 wins, 0 losses, 14 knockouts, and Austin, no doubt, Trout, 30 wins, 3 losses, 17 knockouts. Jarrett Hurd fought Tony Harrison in the last time out, and he was trailing in the fight. He was trailing big. And Hurd has some flaws. It was evident in his fight with Harrison. He can be hit, and guess what? Austin Trout is going to hit this kid, no doubt. Everyone thinks, everybody in that fight, everybody talks about how Harrison was up big on the cards, and if he could have lasted longer, he would have won, and all of this and all of that. I know this because I was one of those people. But for the flaws that Hurd has, nobody talked about the fundamentally sound thing he did that won him the fight against Harrison. If you go to the 9th round of that fight, Harrison threw his patented jab. He'd been landing all night. But this time, Hurd slipped the jab and came over the top with the big right hand to drop and stop Harrison. And it was a textbook. It was a textbook dodge and shoot. And so, from an IQ standpoint, I see that when you analyze the fight a little more, he tried it a few other times that round, but it didn't land. But what that told me is he started to see Harrison's pattern, and he decided he was going to counter over the jab and then not throw the hook or the uppercut as he did prior. So I didn't pay this attention until I recently looked at the fight. And so I expect Trout to fight a similar fight that Harrison did. And especially when Harrison had success when he turned lefty. Well, Trout is a southpaw, so I'm sure he looked at the Harrison tape, primarily focusing on when Harrison went lefty. I expect Hurd to use his size to try to wear Trout down, try to get him late if he can't catch him early. What Jarrett Hurd needs to do, which he doesn't always do, is he needs to use his height advantage and try to make Trout work harder to get inside. Hurd also has a 4.5 inch reach advantage. Well, let me tell you something. Don't just use it. Use it hand in hand with another advantage, your power. Keep Austin Trout at the end of that stick. And if he gets through it, you want to have something else in your back pocket waiting for him. That's your power. And if you get Austin in position for your big uppercut, try to land that. That seems to be a favorite of Hurd. As much reach as Hurd has, one thing for sure, he's not a bad inside fighter. He's tough. He's tough to fight on the inside, so that's something to look at. Defensively, Jarrett Hurd rolls his shoulder, but he kind of leans wrong when he does it and creates opportunities for the opponent to score. He has to fix that flaw. And while Trout might uncover that weakness, Trout doesn't have the power to turn the lights out on him. Nevertheless, he'll score points, and that's Trout's game. Jared Hurd is going to have to, he's going to have to come forward in this fight. I don't think Austin Trout has the pop to stop Swift. I just like Hurd coming forward in this fight and kind of imposing his will on Trout. He needs to be patient, not get frustrated, because Austin Trout has the skills to discourage guys who come at him like that. At first I was leaning heavily toward Austin Trout, but Austin is a bit like Paulie Malignaggi in that he's halfway out the door, and let's put it this way, he's doing more announcing than fighting. So you see Austin Trout behind the microphone more than you do in the ring. So also, well, Trout, he last fought Jermall Charlo in May 2016, and prior to that he fought in September 2015. So activity, in other words, isn't his strong point. So Austin Trout is going to have to box extremely well and be active to beat this kid. Trout has the footwork to do it. I really like the Trout jab. I've liked what I've seen in fights with world-class guys. Saul Canelo Alvarez, Miguel Cotto, Jermall Charlo, and Erislandy Lara. So this is not an easy first title defense at all for Jared Hurd. You got to respect the kid for that. I think he asked for this fight, so much respect. Austin Trout needs to get off and then turn Jared Hurd. Get off and turn him the other way. Keep turning him. And I'm telling you, he's going to score. He's going to score often, and he's going to win some rounds if he does that. Almost everything in me says that Austin Trout should win this fight. He's the better boxer. He has the better defense, better footwork. He's lefty. His resume is much more loaded. I just can't get over the fact that he's just a little bit older now, and he's been inactive, and he's partially cut over to another career, the announcing thing. Let's be real. He's Paulie Malignaggi. So, I want to pick Trout, but something tells me otherwise. It's the inactivity. If it wasn't for that, I'd picked him. I would have picked him big in this fight. Because it's not about the size, it's about the boxing skill, and Trout has more, in my opinion. I'll go with Swift Jared Hurd by a razor thin decision to keep his belt. Finally, we have Jermall Charlo versus the kid, Erickson Lubin, for Charlo's WBC World Super Welterweight or Junior Middleweight title. So the kid, Lubin, the hammer, he's 18-0, 13 knockouts. And Jermall Charlo, and it is Charlo, not Charlo, and I'll prove it. Check the video out below and look at the very first question the radio guy asked his brother Jermall. Just look at the very first question he asked Jermall, and then watch what Jermall says. Check it out. Do me that favor. So Charlo is 29 wins, 0 losses, 14 knockouts. Somebody's old got to go, right? Unless we have a draw. Here's what I think happens here. Here's what I think happens. And if I sound a little distracted, I'm watching this Eagles versus Panthers game. Philly just scored, kicking the extra point, and it is 10-10. 2 minutes, 32 seconds left in the first half. Here's what I think happens. Whoever wins this fight, and I said this in another video, I think is going to be hit with a counter shot. Whoever wins this fight will smash the opponent's jaw with a counter shot. I don't know if it'll be Charlo or LUBIN. And maybe whoever gets dropped will get up and finish, but I'm not sure what their recuperative ability will be. So I see opportunities for both guys to land counter shots. Sometimes Charlo is late to get his hands totally up. They're up, but if you get there fractions of a second earlier, like if you really press for a big shot, you can catch him. I saw this a little bit in the Hatley fight. You have to watch it very closely. It's surprising because what I saw a few years ago with Charlo versus Gabe Rosado was incredible defense and head movement. I saw a different guy. It impressed me at the point. I didn't think he had it in him. And what I see now is it's just a different guy. And maybe it has to do something with switching trainers. This new guy, Derek James, who also trains Errol Spence Jr., he's brought a different Charlo out. It's a more exciting from an offensive standpoint, but will he neglect or forget what Ronnie okay Shields taught him defensively? And if you don't know what I mean, just look at a fight where Ronnie Shields is in the corner, and when the camera goes over to him, he says okay like 20 times in between rounds. If I get a chance, I'm going to ask Charlo on Saturday, if I can, why he left Shields. Now, he may give me what you call an on-camera answer, and then there might be a different answer off camera. I know that Derek James comes at a cheaper price tag than Shields. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I also know that Charlo relates better to James, who's younger than Ronnie Shields. So it may be a thing where there's just a better connection there between the athlete and the trainer. I'm not sure what the official reason is on the split. If you do, leave it below. I'll run it past him if I get a chance to talk to him and ask him, because I'm interested. So Charlo kind of doesn't get the hands all the way up sometimes, and if you can be cat-like quick or a little quicker than you ordinarily are, maybe there's a counter opportunity. LUBIN himself, he can be countered because he's wild sometimes with his punches. and he's just wild with it sometimes, and he leaves himself open for counters, even when he isn't wild. I think something bad is going to happen to someone in this fight. Does that mean a stoppage? No, it might just mean somebody gets dropped once, gets dropped numerous times, or isn't the same person after they get up. And or it could mean, yes, they got stopped. But I see something happening, and I need to watch a little bit more tape on Lubin, and one more on Charlo. But my mind tells me a counter shot may end someone's night before the final bell. If it doesn't, somebody's going to get dropped. And I don't think it's going to be a lead right or a straight left. I think it's going to be a counter. Lubin has a very good right hook that Charlo better worry about. Charlo has a jab that could be a factor in this fight. Although I'm from that school that says I like the lead right more than the jab when fighting a southpaw. They're two schools of thought. Most times when guys fight, a resume for one fighter is usually better than the other. And that doesn't mean the guy with the better resume will win. People talk about Lubin's age. People talk about Lubin's amount of fights. What I look at with Lubin is who he's been in there with. Eric Lubinson is a hot commodity, and everyone is excited about this fight. I wish it was the main event because nobody's talking about LARA versus Gausha. I think this fight is actually going to be the middle fight. They'll open with TROUT, and they'll open up with TROUT, HURD versus TROUT, and then this one, Charlo Lubin, will be the middle fight. I like Jermall Charlo in this fight. I'd favor him to be the one to land the counter shot more than I would say Lubin would, but that's not a guarantee. Lubin is going to ask Charlo questions with his style. My question is, what's going to happen when Charlo asks Lubin the questions? When John Jackson, Vanes Martirosyan, and Gabe Rosado had questions, Charlo had the answers. It was give and take. But who's asked Erickson Lubin questions in his career? Nobody. Because instead of it being give and take with Lubin's opponents, it's been give and give some more. All done by him. So in this fight, he'll have to take. How does he respond? I'm not saying he won't. It's just he hasn't had to change anything that he's done during a fight because of his level of competition. Not the amount of fights and not his age, but the level. I just think Charlo has something waiting for him. It might be early, but I look for it between the 6th and 9th round. I don't know why I feel that, but if you press me, I'll say Charlo will take over late and win a close but clear unanimous decision. I just think he might have something for him that is going to maybe turn a close fight into his favor. Let's put it that way. Or maybe drop LUBIN and earn himself a stoppage. But my gut says he'll kind of take over the fight between maybe somewhere after the 6th or after the 9th or what have you, maybe win a decision. But between 6 and 9, I look for a telling moment in the fight. So we'll give you more coverage, give you a post-fight story as well as a video, and catch you on the next one.